right?
Yeah, I just heard. What about it?
Well, the great Valkyria herself just asked for you by name. She wants to see you in the war room now.
What? Me? Well, that has to be some kind of mistake.
You be sure to tell her that when you see her. In the meantime, those were her orders. Up to her. I don't have any clue what a Valkyr or witch would need you for either, but it's not my place to question it.
I should at least go and see, I suppose. Anyway, thanks, Otto.
Hey, what are friends for, right? Let's swap stories after you get back.
The General's Command Center. I've never seen it inside.
Who's there?
Sir! I apologize for the intrusion. I was told you wanted to... 5th Regiment Engineer...
Ah, you. The new engineer.
I'm terribly sorry. I didn't know you would be... grooming...
Stay. It's fine. I just like to at least try to remember that I'm a woman, even out in the field. I am Valkyria Bless. Command of the Citadel takeover falls to me. That's why I called you here. In 2 hours, I'll be taking a force into the Citadel interior. We'll eliminate the entrenched Gallian forces and take Yolendio as our own. Unfortunately, my engineer sustained serious injury at the battle outside the gates today. You'll be standing in for him as my support henceforth.
Of course, sir. I have so little battle experience still, and well, I'd just hate to be a liability to you, sir.
Come to think of it, your commanding officer was hesitant to recommend you for the job as well. He said you were meek, that you might panic out there and bring the rest of the team down. Are you afraid of being on the front lines?
Yes. When I'm out there, sometimes it's all just too much. My legs stop listening to me and...
It's a natural response. There's not a person alive who doesn't feel unsure in battle. But that's when you need to remember, I am not alone.
Not alone?
You'll have me at your back, and in turn, I'll know I can fight safely because of your help. Believe in your squad mates, in your friends. That will be what gets you through the mission.
Yes, sir.
That's better. You look a bit less terrified now. It's almost time.
Yes, sir.
Brothers in arms in the service of His grace, here are your orders. This battle will shape you.
General Damon, the Imperials have breached the Citadel wall, sir.
Now, will they give us no rest? Well, we'll just have to see they regret it.
Any fool knows the shortest road to victory is to secure the high ground. Their defeat was settled the minute they gave up a piece of the outer wall. How can you not realize that? Listen well, Engineer. I'll carve us a clear path. Your job is to keep me in fighting shape. I don't carry any ragweed myself.
What? But why not?
I dislike it. As a child in that facility, I spent every waking moment bathed in that light. Surprised to hear a Valkyria warrior of the Blue Flames speak in such a way?
Not at all, sir.
I fight without depending on Ragnite, except when using the powers of the Valkyria. I carry no ragweed, no grenades, only this gun. A gift from his crate. That makes your role all the more important. But there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move. Moving out. There you are. Enemy neutralized.
Man down out there! Secure the Citadel immediately!
I'm on my way. Dodging, I'm good.
Galleon unit spotted.
I'm on my way. Dodging, I'm good. Enemy spotted.
Man down out there!
Moving out. Enemy neutralized.
Another Guardian down! Keep going! Stay where...
him at any cost.
Damn it.
General, I have a question.
Speak.
I should think that with His Grace's Batimus, it should be quite easy to simply level the Citadel, right? Why go to the trouble of sending in foot soldiers to take it over from the inside?
This place is the ideal stronghold to weather a Gallian counteroffensive down the road. It was decided the optimal course of action was to take Valendio in as close to perfect condition as possible.
A counteroffensive? Do
You do well to remember this, engineer. There are no absolutes in war. There may well come a day when it's us help. Don't get nervous on this. With our forces, the Empire ought not be defeated.
Moving out.
Enemy sighted!
Enemy neutralized.
Another Guardian down.
Moving out.
The time for timidness has passed.
Enemy neutralized.
Commencing action! Dodging, I'm good at it!
Be wary of intercepting fire. Enemy neutralized.
Commencing action! Dodging, I'm good at it! I'm on my way! Dodging, I'm good at it!
Good work. Thank you.
You bet your match with me, Imperial scum!
Introducing Star on Disney Plus. Now with more drama, more all-new originals. You're very lucky. More exclusives, more award winners.
It's just a start.
Now there's even more to explore on Disney Plus. Now including Star.
Novus Vitamins. Over 80 years of trust and expertise in every tablet, and affordable enough to support Australians' health every single day. Be clever healthy.
Somewhere in Harvest Moon, One World, there's a really interesting seed of an idea for a new take on farming sims, which would be much appreciated after 25 years of very similar games. In the right hands, turning a farming simulator series into a plot-driven, exploration-focused adventure game sounds like a brilliant idea, and yet, One World fails in just about every way to do anything interesting or innovative with this new idea other than layer it on top of a deeply mediocre farming sim. Unlike its numerous Harvest Moon predecessors and competitors, One World does not have to inherit an old farm in a dying village and spend years rebuilding them. Instead, you're handed a newly invented portable farm in the first 10 minutes, and sent off on an adventure across its world through 5 different towns with their own climates, hazards, and problems. The problem is that the One World of One World is boring in every way. Everything looks bland, except for the named characters, which are exactly fine. Towns are dull and empty, with just a couple identical houses each. The areas between them are mostly long and same-ish paths. There's little detail, no personality, just long stretches of empty space. It also sometimes does not work correctly. Sound frequently sputters when you're moving from area to area. Characters and objects appear and disappear from existence, sometimes on purpose, according to their respective schedules, but sometimes just because they're not loading in fast enough. The aesthetics of One World are not where the mundanity ends. Unlike other Harvest Moon games, where you get to know a town of distinct and personable neighbors, there are few actual developed characters in One World, outside of its roster of bachelors and bachelorettes. The majority of the cast is made up of same-looking individuals with names like Awkward Man or Thoughtful Woman, whose only personality trait is sending you endless mail to ask you to bring them random items. The bachelors and bachelorettes have a bit more going for them, but are still largely pretty samey in the end. For the most part, they are distinguished almost entirely by their looks and what town they hang out in the most. Marrying one is inconsequential. You can't even do it until the post-game, and it's gated behind a lot of time spent in the extremely boring mines. With an empty world and a soulless cast, that leaves the actual farming to carry One World, and it doesn't. Because even though it has several new ideas that might have worked if they were handled differently, here they're just clumsy. As is usual for the Harvest Moon games, the Harvest Goddess is absent, which has caused everyone in the world to forget how farming works. So instead of buying seeds at the store, you have to hunt them down. One of the more interesting new ideas is that harvest wisps, scattered throughout the world, will hand you 1 seed per day per wisp, meaning much of your ability to actually use your farm is also tied to exploring the world. Plus, each crop has certain seasons and regions of the world it grows better in. You can still plant crops off-season or in other areas, but they'll grow more slowly, or mutate and become different crops entirely. There's a lot of potential here for fun experimentation with where you put your farm and what you grow and when, but it's never realized. The problem is that nothing is ever really explained. Sure, there's a log that gives hints about how to get which mutations after you've already obtained them, but even if you plant the same crop in the same region at the same time, it doesn't always seem to mutate consistently. that causes a major headache if you're trying to grow something specific for a quest or for money. In fact, One World lacks clear instruction throughout, often placing you into frustrating situations without a way out. Some quests that are critical to the story ask you to find items that can take weeks of in-game time to find and farm, or require specific seeds or tool upgrades without offering any hint as to where those might be found. Your best bet is to talk to everyone constantly and repeatedly, and do every single quest possible until you accidentally stumble over the thing you're looking for. Harvest Moon One World has a novel idea for an exploration-focused farming game, but then sets that idea in an empty, uninteresting world. Its characters are dull, its quests are often confusing or frustrating, and it lacks the personality of just about any other farming sim option out there, including most of its direct predecessors. At best, One World's farming elements are satisfying enough to pass the time with. But there's just not much else here, and so much else in other games in this genre. For more Switch games, check out our reviews of Bravely Default 2 and Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Take some stress out of moving. Sign up online with Origin and book your move in just 5 minutes. That's Origin's Move Promise. Call 13MOVE or search Origin Move. Origin, good energy.
Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture. Very pleased to say I am joined now by the legend that is Biggie. Biggie, thank you so much for taking time to chat to us today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No, great to have you on and great to talk to you about this fantastic Kickstarter project of yours, Our Hero Drop. For those people who are maybe a little bit unaware about it, tell us a little bit more about it.
So this all started for me, I think, so after the murder of George Floyd, so many of us were really hit by it, and me especially. It was honestly the first time that the death of someone that I never met, that I didn't know, really felt very personal. And I think a lot of it had to do also with the pandemic and the fact that we don't have these distractions. We don't have, like, it's not like, hey, I have a flight to catch in 2 hours, I'm sad, but I gotta get out of here. You know, we had time to sit and think, and it just kept weighing on me. And I kept thinking about all the societal problems and systemic racism and all these things that feel so weighty and massive and unrootable. And I thought, you know, I may not be the top of the system, but I can do something. And so for me, one of the things that I've really come to love in my job with pro wrestling is that you can use your wrestling gear to say something, to express something. And we've been using that oftentimes in the new day to express us being blurs, black nerds, and our affinity for culture and anime. And I felt like using our gear to make a statement, whether that be solidarity or education, I felt it was important. So, you know, for a while, you know, we had all this free time, and I was just kind of going on a walk daily, kind of clear my head, think, and it kind of became this meditative thing. And during one of my walks, I kept thinking, man, what about doing something akin to Schoolhouse Rock, but for important black figures? And I know in my educational experience, so often Black history is just confined to February. And it's Martin Luther King, it's Rosa Parks, and maybe slavery, and that's it, and we move on. But Black history is such a massive part of not just the world's history, but it also very much it's a huge part of the fabric of American history. And I felt like these are stories that need to be told more often, that our history is so much more than just two people, and those two people did incredible things, but there's so many more stories to be told. And I've had so many conversations with so many of my other Black friends and family members, and we all kind of came to the same conclusion that it wasn't until college or maybe even later in life that we heard some of the names like Ida B. Wells or Ruby Bridges, and we felt like, you know, this is a travesty. So I just thought it would be really cool to represent so many of these figures in a Schoolhouse Rock style, that style of art, and I gotta give all hats off to Jonathan Davenport, who is incredible. He's been designing our gear since 2015, and he's worked with Woods even before then. And so I just reached out to Jonathan, and I said, you know, what if we did this idea, and this wasn't an art style that he really worked in before, but he's so incredible that he can just kind of do his homework, do his research, and jump into it. So I remember at first I gave him 2 or 3 names, then threw like 3 or 4 more, and then, you know, very soon we were at 17. It's like, hey, man, I don't think we can trim this down here. 17 names. Can we find a way to fit them all on my gear or my entrance jacket? And we did the same thing with some coach gear as well. And I thought the gear was really well received. We got a lot of good feedback. And kept thinking, you know, this is pretty cool, but this could be a little bit more, but we didn't know where to go with it. And then my really good buddy Andreas Hale, he's a writer, he's worked at BT, he works at The Zone now, Sporting News, he's published, he's done a bunch of incredible things, and has worked as an activist too. And he's someone we actually had on our podcast right after the death of George Floyd. And we had this conversation with him because we wanted to have someone who had actually worked in this, who was knowledgeable, and I thought he did such a killer job really putting more context behind our fears and our anxieties. But anyways, we had Andreas kind of, you know, reached out to me and said, this should be way more. So the 3 of us kind of got together and put our heads together and came up with this idea to use a short film, to use hip-hop, to use science fiction, to use animation to tell the story of one of our black heroes, and that's Ruby Bridges.
It's sort of a great quote. It's like a Smithsonian of the future, basically, showcasing all of this. And I was hoping, when we were chatting about getting you on, I was hoping to have you on and give a big push to this Kickstarter project and get it over the target. You smashed it already. You hit the target on your birthday, a hell of a birthday present. Now you are hoping to hit your stretch goal and get a top-notch music producer on board. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think because of the nature of Kickstarter, it's all or nothing. So we wanted to make sure we had a goal that we could actually hit, and we felt pretty good with 75,000. But honestly, realistically, we might need closer to double that to tell the story that we want to in the right way. And Rich's story is so incredible. For anyone who doesn't know, she was born in 1954, which is the same year as Brown Board of Education, and that was supposed to end segregation in schools in the United States. But several states, especially in the South, were very resistant. And so in 1960, when she was only 6 years old, you see these pictures of this little girl. Just imagine this 6-year-old child was thrust into the situation that was so much bigger than a little child should have to go through. A student girl that she integrated for the first time. And her story to me is so compelling because it not just tells the story of this brave little black girl, but it tells the story too of she had one teacher who was the only one who actually said, I will teach you. Everyone else, there were teachers who quit their jobs, refused. There was so much uproar around her, but for a whole year, a whole school year, it was just me and this one white teacher. And I think it's such an incredible message because it shows you that you can be young and you can be brave and you can do something that seems bigger than you, but also that tells you that, hey, you might not be black, but as a non-black person, you can stand up for what's right. You can help others in need. So there's so many elements of her story that just felt right. But yeah, man, the Kickstarter has gone exceptionally well, and I'm so grateful for all the people who have helped spread the word, who have helped back our project, and who checked it out. I'm so grateful for that. But we still have more work to do. And you know, we are actually ending our campaign right after WrestleMania. I think April 12th is the end of our campaign. So please feel free to keep spreading the word, backing us, and doing these things because we have more to do.
Yeah, ourheroesrock.org if you want to go and donate to that. You've just about to hit your stretch goal. Like I say, any donation is very much appreciated. It's obviously reward cheers, etc. If you want to go check that out, ourheroesrock.org. It's clearly something you're incredibly passionate about. It's about, like you say, presenting heroes of black history. Who are some of your heroes growing up then?
Man, there are so many. I would say, for me as a kid, I think the kind of shame I have is that I didn't learn certain things until I was older in life. And so I remember, like, as a young kid, it's Martin Luther King you're taught about, and I think that's an incredible story. But I also, as I got a little bit older, I learned to gravitate towards Malcolm X, and just how defiant he was. But I wish I had known about, say, Fred Hampton. And there's an incredible movie about Fred Hampton. It's I think in the States, it's on HBO Max right now. It's called Judas and the Black Messiah. And so Fred Hampton was murdered at 21. And that man, he was so young, such a young man. And I think too often the Black Panthers were vilified. But one of the things that we don't mention about this, the Black Panthers were the ones who started a free breakfast program to make sure that the kids were fed. And there's so many, that's another thing that I've tried to address and help out with more is addressing food insecurity. Because with the pandemic, you had so many kids who were eating lunches, were eating breakfast, were getting meals at schools, and now they don't have that same opportunity for everything fed. So when you look at inequality, when you look at systemic inequity, there are just so many facets beyond what they start to housing and jobs, and there's so many elements of it. But I wish as a kid that I had known about someone like Fred Hampton.
I'm on my way.
Or Lorraine Hansberry.
Dodging, I'm good.
There's just so many of these names that I think I would have really gravitated to. So many incredible stories. People who were incredibly brave. And that's why we want to bring this Kickstarter project to life. I think Fred Hampton has an incredible story. And his ending is beyond tragic. To see that he was killed, in his bed, he was sleeping. A man who really fought to better his community. And I think it's an incredible story. There's so many more stories. Too. So we hope to address many of these.
Yeah, exactly. This Kickstarter will be absolutely amazing. If you want to go and support it, as I said, ourheroesrock.org, and your donation really helps with this fantastic project. Now we move into the wrestling now. We're of course returning to SmackDown this week. Missing for some for a couple of weeks. How are you feeling? And how are you feeling about the new version of Apollo Crews we've seen on TV recently?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm ready to get back. I'm ready to get after it. I will have to say, I think Apollo has stepped up, man. I'll give him that. He's one of those guys who I think too often you see is extremely talented and never gets that opportunity. And it's a what could have been. And my hope for him is that no one has to ask those questions anymore. That there's no what could have been with Apollo. That we get to see him hit that ceiling. Because for me, man, it's iron sharpens iron. I think there's some people, some talents and wrestlers who want to make sure the limelight is always on them. But when you have the best views, when you have the best opponents, that just makes you better. And that's what I want. I don't want to just be able to easily roll through everyone handed to me. I want to fight the best. I want to be in the ring with the best. I want people to remember, like the same way that people still hit us up about the Usos matches from 3-4 years ago. I want that as a singles. I want that with Apollo. I want feuds that people are like excited to see, and that's been something that's been really, it's been cool to see. Even though we're things have gotten heated between us, I will commend him for stepping up. I'll commend him for taking that opportunity to not just do the same old thing. And I think he's in that midst of finding his footing as a character. He was a guy who always had a great look. He can always do incredible things. You see a guy who can effortlessly do moonsaults and can gorilla press people. And much like Cesaro, that I love that combination of strength and speed. Like that to me is, you got like your perfect wrestler all in one with a guy like Cesaro. When a guy can do so many facets of that, and there's so much of that in Apollo, of a guy who can blend all these styles so well. And for him, it was just a matter of finding, character-wise and entertainment-wise and promo-wise, to really find a lane. Right now, he's carving that path, and it's cool to see. And as much as I look forward to whooping his ass, I also am looking forward to seeing him grow as a character.
Yeah, it's obviously, or I should assume it's been a relatively tough time on SmackDown, being apart from Cody and Woods, of course. But it must be such an exciting time as well, because there is so much talent on the Street brand. You look across the title pictures, whether it be the women's title, or the Intercontinental title, or the world title. There's so much excitement about what's going on there. It must be head to wrestling.
No, completely, man. We got so many guys who, if you look at guys who kind of crossed paths with Roman lately, or who have just gotten more opportunities lately. Man, there's so many guys you can see believably holding a world title. Like I mentioned Cesaro, there's Bryan, there's Kevin Owens. You see how Jey Uso has stepped up. We have so many guys of that caliber who now are conceivable. Like it makes sense to see them in that world title picture. You know, there's a ton of talent on SmackDown. So many future Hall of Famers, so many really talented people. And I really like our show. I like the people we have on it. I like the women's side too. It's been so heartwarming to see Bianca get the opportunity that she deserves. She's a one of one. Seeing a woman with that kind of athleticism who just owns, like, she knows who she is. She is unabashedly her, and I love that. She's incredible, and it's so inspiring to see Sasha continue to not just get to the top and coast, but to see her continue to have outstanding performance after outstanding performance. And now you have, like, Bayley is almost, I don't want to say on the periphery, but she's done an incredible job too, and she's not even really in that conversation right now. But she's finding ways to reinvent herself, and it's so incredible to me to look back at Bayley and think there's so many people who saw her as, wow, that's a lifetime big deal. That's someone who, like a Ricky Steamboat, who will always make kids smile. That's her role, and she's going to nail it. But then she finally gets this opportunity to be a heel, and she's knocked it out of the park, man. She's reinvented herself in an incredible way. And that, to me, that stuff is really inspiring when I see people from different divisions and from all across the company continue to find ways to grow and to show different facets of themselves.
Now, of course, on the road to WrestleMania, we'll have fans in attendance. I must be so excited to have fans back there, you know, far more than we've seen over the past year. Really, what do you miss most about having that?
Man, fans are everything, and it can sound cliche, and I get it, but in pro wrestling, that's one of the first things that you learn to do. Like, that's the basis of our business, is fan reaction, the ability to control a crowd, to get them to move, cheer, laugh. That is the essence of what we do, and the Thunderdome has been, that's our best plan B. That's our best, like, hey, sorry guys, it's a pandemic, we're giving you the best we can. I think they've done a great job putting a ton of money into that and making it look as good as possible. And of course, like, health and safety is something that's vitally important. And, you know, I don't know how you stop it. 500,000 people in this country alone dying because of coronavirus. So it's something that, you know, I'm all for taking as much time as we need to make sure this is under control first. But I'm really excited to be able to perform in front of fans again. It's my hometown, you know. I'm born and raised in Tampa. I still live here. It's pretty cool to be Raymond James, a place that, like, I played my high school football all-star game there when I was, 17. I've been there for a whole game in college. Raymond James very much like, and I joke with the guys on our podcast, because it was like, at the time, there was a little tag to help build the stadium, and as I feel like, you know, I helped build that. So it is going to be really cool to have fans there, and I'm excited, like I said, man, fans are your prerogative, and I miss that prerogative. They tell you if something is good or if something is bad, they give you that instant live feedback, and I love that one town that we can be in LA, or we can be in London, we can be in Tokyo, and every crowd is different. And that's what I love about pro wrestling in our industry. And hopefully, when this pandemic is under control, we can get back to that.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to say, I love your playing for. I know you said the embarrassment. I want to people being praised, but it's absolutely fantastic. Wonderful story about you coming through the system, and from the beginning, like you say, of football and then wrestling, it's amazing. I didn't realise quite how early. I don't want to say that you worked incredibly hard, but you know, the coincidences, the things that gave you those opportunities that you see, it's astonishing.
Yeah, man, this is the story of my life. Every really big thing that I wanted kind of came out of nowhere, and I just looked into it. So, you know, one of the reasons that I want to do more to give back now that I feel like so many people gave to me. There's so many people who blessed me. Really, you know, I really believe there's no making it alone. There's not like getting to any good point in your life directly or indirectly, and I'm so grateful for all of it. And yeah, I'm very fortunate because it's I tell people too, when I was 22 years old, I asked me to list 200 jobs. I'm telling you, pro wrestling would not be on the list. It would not. Yeah, I never.
In terms of like, you talk about doing football like that, and then just sort of stumbling into wrestling. What other jobs were you considering?
So I was in grad school at the time, and I wanted to be an athletic director. That was my plan was actually spend 1 more year. So I had 1 year completed on my master's. I was probably going to spend another year getting my master's, and then I was contemplating going to school to work on my doctorate, which would have been another 5 years of being bored, and then hoping to work in an athletic department somewhere or possibly teach. And all of a sudden, my life just kind of went elsewhere. And when I first got to school, to college, I was pre-med for a little bit, and I very quickly realized this is not for me. Pre-med can kick my ass. But I was it was up that period in my life when I was 22, 23, where my head was kind of spinning. It's like, what do I do with my life now? I had no idea. So I'm beyond grateful for this, because when I'm in a ring or when I'm at work, I feel like this is what I'm meant to be doing. I'm at the right spot. This feels like the place I'm supposed to be. And I never would have fathomed. I've been doing this for almost 12 years. And it's been a blessing. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, with me being the rest of the mail and getting into baseball.
Yeah.
No,
it was.
Talking recently, I saw another podcast about a fancy job the 24 years stretch myself there. Kind of lost my way a little bit, weren't sure, and then obviously this amazing breakthrough relationship with Woods and Copley just burst back onto the scene. And there's talk obviously in that documentary as well about potentially being involved in the Shield early. If you could have been a member of any other wrestling stable of any time, which one would you like to have been a part of?
This might feel like a lazy answer, but the Nation of Domination. But that was the one as a kid. I just like. I was also a huge Ron Simmons fan because, for one, I grew up a big Florida State fan as a Florida kid, and I think he was a Heisman Trophy candidate, which, if you don't know, is almost impossible to do as a nose tackle. He was one of the best defensive linemen to ever do it. So Ron Simmons was my guy, and just again, like Mark Henry, he was one of the strongest men to ever walk the earth. So from that standpoint, to just really getting into this strength stuff, they just were cool. I mean, it really just boils down to that. Those guys were just real cool. And you go back and watch their stuff now, and they're just massive. My God, they're all, like, D'Lo's the smallest. D'Lo's not tiny. They're all massive humans. So yeah, I'd say the Nation of Domination, which is kind of what we wanted to be initially. That's essentially what the New Day was. That was Woods' very first pitch, was doing essentially a Nation of Domination 2.0, and the writers all kind of just laughed at him. And when we came out, the very first time you see us, and I think we're in Miami, in 2014, that summer, and he's wearing that white and red suit. That's what we wanted the action to be. And it's funny because, at the time it was not funny, but he comes out, he does his promo about like smiling and laughing. That's all over. Now, like, it was supposed to be the start of something pretty militant. And then, and within a few short months, we're doing everything that you mentioned to the end of the clapping as absurdly as we can, but thankfully we were able to turn things around, and we ended up okay. Things are alright for us.
Yeah, that was going to say, starts on Nation of Domination, cuts to say, you're going to be a bunch of preachers, and then it cuts to you guys falling out of box of videos and wearing a uniform, or two can imagine these sorts of things. Now, one thing I had to ask you about, I was doing a bit of digging. Is it true that you made an Arn Anderson dating profile, or is that how I observed it?
No, it's true. So I don't know the question. I think I first said it on the podcast. And I love Arn, by the way. And I don't think, I never told him this. And it was just something, so we would always, Celeste and I, worked with WWE's Caitlin, That's one of my best friends. And we just would do things to, and it's the road, you know, you do things to entertain yourself. And we loved Arn, and for some reason thought of Arn being on a dating website was real funny to us. This is probably like 7 years ago. So I think I ended up making a quick dating profile for Arn, but I never responded to any of the messages. I don't even think I used his name as Arn. At the time it was very funny, but now when I think about it, it seems real childish and not as funny, but at the time it really made me giggle. So I apologize to Arn. I love you, Arn. And
it would have made the weirdest episode of Catfish I think I've ever. Yeah, some weird ones out there. Now, of course, everyone knows about you being asked about basically any opponent of the whole is just hilarious. That is something that entertains the watchers on a regular. Recently, with Brad York and Soldier Boy, more sort of celebrities, I wanted to ask you if you could have a dream match with any celebrity, who would you like to face?
Man, that is a good question. I really haven't given it a ton of thought, but man, you kind of stumped me here. I don't think I've been asked to I was thinking like rapper, because I really love rap and staying in that rap lane. Wale's my guy, so I can't face Wale, but maybe. It's a bad answer because no one else. I would say Freddie Gibbs. Because I think Gibbs is a really talented rapper that I really enjoy, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking for a name that they recognize in some way by this. But if you don't like Freddie Gibbs and you like rap, or you haven't heard of Freddie Gibbs, listen to Freddie Gibbs. He's very talented, and I think he'd be a solid pro wrestler. So let's go with Freddie Gibbs because I don't really have another good answer.
I was down the same age. I thought we were talking about rappers and stuff. Better answer. I just went with the whitest possible answer. I was like, Biggie, Jay-Z, John John.
Well, Jay-Z, all respect to Jay-Z. He's, the man's in his 50s.
Yeah.
And I know they're wrestlers around doing their thing in their later years, but that's, I don't think Jay-Z's out there taking bumps, you know what I'm saying? I don't think that's anything that we will see happening. The Soulja Boy thing sounds absurd, but I can actually see that. Maybe next Mania, you never know in this business, you never know.
There's Bow Wow's calling people out like that center as well.
There's Bow Wow too, and Bad Bunny's been killing it. So if you asked me a year ago, I never would have fathomed that. The fact that he's been training evidently in PC, from what I hear, and has been on Raw regularly. These are all very strange times, very bizarre times.
Very, very weird. Finally, talked a little bit about WrestleMania 38 there. Whispers, I know it's a long way off, and many people don't take it before then, but what do you reckon is the idea of a match between yourself and Roman Reigns versus the championship? I think it would be a nail-dominating match.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal to be in that tier, to be at the very top. I think Roman's done a stellar job. Everyone's, stellar isn't a good enough superlative to describe how much he's elevated himself, even though he was already at the top. And I think his presentation, the promos, the character stuff, all that stuff has been really cool to see. And he's been killing it, so much respect to him. But yeah, I think that would be, as far as I am thinking of one, that would be the one. That would be the one. So hopefully by next year, he's still got the title, and he's at all the quarter days. And we'll see. There's a lot that can happen. I appreciate that, man.
It's a video podcast. My name is Ben. And my name is Peter. Hello, Peter. Good morning. How are you? Hello, Ben. Good morning. I am fine. How are you? I'm good, thank you. I'm hoping we're sort of the home stretch now. Yes, yeah. remember recording in that brand new podcast studio. Yeah, we did maybe 3 episodes. Yeah. It's very creepy and nice. LEDs and stuff. Made brick. Yeah. Enemy neutralized. I have something's fake. Real brick made of foam. Yeah, so they are real foam bricks. They're just not. They're not. They're not. They're not made of bricks. Not made out of bricks. Yeah. Which, just to be clear, there is no proof. We're just looking at this year. Just know that soon we'll have a vaccine and a microchip inside our bodies, and that will be okay. Yeah. Yeah, and medicine. Yeah. But I have to stress to myself, I do not know how to operate that mixer. We only just learned, and now it's been over a year, and I can't remember any buttons to press. I also feel like a bit. Press the buttons. Something. Yeah. At some point, we'll be able to record in the same room again, and I appreciate that. Perhaps the video component of this podcast is nearly as needed as it people are probably really enjoying the way we're walking, and that's good. You have to remove that running head. Where are we walking? We could have that on the TV in the background now, because we can animate it and take every week. Doesn't that sound like fun? Yeah. We're a little way away from that. We might get there eventually. Who knows? For now, we're recording at home in. You're not in a bedroom, are you? You have a special room. It's a spare bedroom at the moment. There's no bed in it. Moved into this during lockdown. I was like, I'm not putting a bed in here. This is my office. But yeah, it's a spare room. Spare room and a bedroom. And this is where we're going to do the Triple Jump video game podcast for the foreseeable. I'm trying to remember when we actually started working from home. It was towards the end of this month, wasn't it? Like early March. No, it was like tail end of March, early April. You guys were just before the rest of us because you went home feeling a bit reasons. Yeah, it was no Friday or something. What was the? I remember actually. I'm gonna do some quick searches now. Right. Because I did a Bioshock stream from home. Okay. Part 3. Yes, here we go. It aired on the 17th of March. My first stream from home.
Here at Central Life, our Division 1 winners don't just win once. They win 20k every month for 20 years. Set for Life is 20k on replay.
Play now in store at thelot.com or on the Lot app.
A former Australian soldier is in custody tonight, charged with offences. James Davis was supported by 5 of his partners as he faced court accused of keeping a woman as a slave at Maroubra in 2013. James Davis claims he's the master of men.
Some blind girl, an abusive oppressor, misogynist, manipulator, or even a monster. But the truth is that I'm just a guy who enjoys both freedom and commitment, and was lucky enough to find some incredible woman to love, and to love me back.
But yesterday, police arrested the former Australian soldier in a Bunnings car park at Armidale in the Northern Tablelands before charging him with several slavery offences. Today, 5 of his partners came to support Davis for his first appearance in court. Are you all supporting James? Do any of you consider yourselves slaves or identify as being slaves? The court heard he's accused of possessing a slave and causing a woman to remain in servitude at Maroubra in 2013. Are you all happy in your relationship? Davis is the self-proclaimed leader of a cult called the House of Cataphor.
The Learning Master, your own property is slate 808-497-06 being presented, ready for making use of.
The 40-year-old has previously boasted about his love of bondage and roleplay in a documentary.
I think every man needs a page in their room. Helps managing extra girlfriends.
Davis has always been very open about his lifestyle online, but recently he and his partners disappeared from social media, moving to this remote property 40 kilometres out of Armadale. Yesterday, police raided his property and seized several items as part of an ongoing investigation. The 40-year-old remains in custody tonight, but will be applying for bail next week. Emma Partridge, 9 News.
If they get the vaccines and they get this bill through, that GDP growth could be as high as 5 or even 6%. The original House bill, of course, contained that minimum $15 an hour federal minimum wage. That was one of the casualties of the process through the Senate. Is that now dead and buried, or could that come back in some other form? The revisiting, yes. The prospects that it passes, I think, are pretty good. The legislative process basically says only something that has to do with the budget can have a 50-vote requirement. If it doesn't have to do with the budget, then you have to get 60 votes to overcome the legislative commitment. So that's where you need 10 Republicans out of the 50 Republicans. I think they will certainly revisit the minimum wage, but I think it's also really hard to conceive that we could get 10 of the 50 Republicans to vote for a $50 minimum wage that doesn't seem mandatory.
President Biden upped the order for the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine by another 100 million doses this week. It's not expected to bring forward the time when all Americans are vaccinated, but it now means they will have more than enough shots to do the job. President Biden again trumpeted the speed of the vaccine rollout during the first 2 days.
Some weeks around 8% of the season. Those most vulnerable to receive the vaccination today, 60% over the age of 65 or older have received at least one shot.
They're really doing that. When we last compared America to the rest of the world, all these countries were inoculating at a faster rate per capita than the US. But now, America is outpacing a number of them, like this is the UK. So America is dosing up at a rate that is third in the world. There's not just a lot of vaccines, but good vaccines as well. Pfizer has just shown in the lab that their vaccine will theoretically work against the variant that everyone is afraid of, the Brazilian variant. Right now, Brazil is number 1 for COVID deaths by a mile. So fingers crossed there. Yeah, let's hope it's more than just a theory. But of course, a year after the WHO declared a pandemic, for many Americans, this vaccine is coming too late. US death toll is approaching 530,000 this week. And new figures from the Centre for Disease Control show a staggering 15% increase in the number of Americans who died last year. More Americans died last year than any previous year. COVID has become the third highest cause of death behind just heart disease and all forms of cancer combined. In fact, COVID is within about 100,000 of overtaking cancer. That has caused death. And slightly less incredible stuff from the CDC. About 73% of American COVID deaths have been overweight people and 46% have been obese people. Now, some have interpreted that to mean you don't need to worry about COVID if you're thin. But hang on, 70% of America is overweight and 42% of America is obese. So really, deaths are fairly proportionate. There is no golden ticket except for the vaccine. Yeah, and as more states move to abandon mask mandates and social distancing this week, In the city of Boise, Idaho, they've been holding a mask-burning rally. The permanent mask with riding sucks. That's not very right, is it? No, well, not unless they're used masks, in which case it's quite essential when this goes on. Maybe? Okay. Last, of course, by help states reopen Idaho. Remember that. By the way, the reason why the states must be doing masks is because the UK variant is on the march. It's between 20 and 30% of the virus has been detected in a number of states now, and it was just 1 to 2% 4 weeks ago, meaning it's going to double again within 10 days before the vaccines get there. And the last time that the UK variant turned up in 50% of virus checks, it was back in Europe, and it led to a major surge. So maybe don't burn that mask quite yet. Also, an update on the change to in-class learning in schools. We talked about a lot. Research is increasingly suggesting this should be happening pretty soon. Brown University conducted a survey of positive COVID tests found in early February that school staff are actually contracting COVID 30% less than the general community was. I mean, they were safer in the school than outside. And that continued in late February. Furthermore, when the CDC cited some studies to justify their caution about returning to schools, the actual scientists who conducted one of those studies got narky, writing the CDC guidance does not take into account the data we have regarding disease transmission in schools. And they went further, saying keeping schools even partially closed is unwarranted, is harming children, and has become a human rights issue. Things are wrapping up there, John. They certainly are. Now, this week marked the 56th anniversary of the infamous Bloody Sunday attack on voting rights activists in Selma, Alabama. It came at a time when some states are again trying to wind voting rights back. The fight for voting rights has been a long and painful one in the United States. In 1865, following a 4-year civil war, more than 250 years of African slavery ended in America with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. 3 years after that, the 14th Amendment granted former slaves citizenship rights and equal protection. But it wasn't until 1870 that the 15th Amendment ensured
United citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or removed by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude.
And it was still totally cruel to deny people the right to vote on the basis of gender, and would be for another years, by the way. But after 1890, former slave states in the South got to work trying to re-segregate their society under so-called Jim Crow laws, named for a stereotypical black minstrel character. With legislation like the Louisiana Railway Separate Car Act.
Any passenger thinking of going into a coach or compartment to which, by race, he does not belong shall be liable to a fine of $25.
States of the old Confederacy also restricted ballot access for black male voters. They couldn't do it on racial grounds anymore, so they did it on the basis of wealth, through poll taxes. If you couldn't pay the tax, you couldn't register to vote. Literacy tests were also used to deny the vote to poorly educated former slaves. And if taxes and tests weren't enough, some white election officials just refused to let a black man cast a ballot.
It's like...
The Democratic Party declared their primaries were whites only. And then there was widespread election violence and intimidation, including hundreds of lynchings by the likes of the Ku Klux Klan. And it worked. In the state of Louisiana in 1896, there were 130,000 registered black voters. 8 years later, at the election of 1904, that was reduced to just 1,342. Jim Crow laws and the segregationist myth of separate but equal access endured in much of the South for the next 60 years or so. Grandfather laws prevented anyone from registering to vote whose grandfather hadn't been enrolled, again, mostly affecting the descendants of slaves. When courts ruled that unconstitutional, black voters in Oklahoma were given just 11 days to enroll or be banned from voting for life. And it wasn't until the 1960s that things really began to change.
Congress passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law, and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men that began with Lincoln and the Civil War 100 years ago.
Along with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 also saw the 24th Amendment finally ban poll taxes. 4 months later, there was record black turnout for the presidential election. 58% of almost 21 million eligible black voters, twice the level of the previous election. But there was still a massive regional divide. Outside the South, there was 72% black turnout. In the South itself, just 44% of black voters cast a ballot. And here is part of the reason why. Confusing literacy tests like this one, also from the state of Louisiana. In theory, it could be given to anyone who couldn't prove they'd completed the 5th grade, but in practice, it was mostly given to black people.
In the first circle below, write the last letter of the first word beginning with L. Draw a line from circle 2 to circle 5 that will pass below circle 2 and above circle 4. What?
And get just one answer wrong, you couldn't vote. In other cases, black voters were told to recite the US Constitution from memory, 4,500 words of it. The brutal attack by Alabama state troopers and a white mob on John Lewis and his fellow voting rights campaigners in Selma on March 7, 1965 was seen on television screens across America and around the world. President Lyndon Johnson vowed to act.
It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 banned literacy tests and grandfather laws and provided federal oversight of voter registration in areas where fewer than 50% of the non-white population were registered to vote. And 9 states had to get federal approval to change their voting laws. And that held until 2013.
After nearly half a century, the U.S. Supreme Court pulled the plug today on federal supervision of 9 mostly southern states whose records on race relations were deemed a threat to minority voting rights.
At the time, Chief Justice John Roberts justified the decision saying America had changed. But Eric Holder, the first black attorney general serving in the administration of America's first black president, Barack Obama, said it hadn't changed enough to gut the Voting Rights Act.
These problems have not been consigned to history. They continue to exist. Their effects are real. They are of today, not yesterday, and they corrode the foundations of our democracy.
Since 2013, dozens of states have moved to again limit ballot access, including the shutting down of polling places, expanding ID requirements, and urging voter registration rolls. During the coronavirus pandemic, the 2020 election saw a surge in early and mail-in voting, with over 66% of eligible American voters casting a ballot. That was up more than 6 points on 2016, and higher than previous peaks in 2008, 1960, and 1980. That was the best turnout for any year since 1900, when those Jim Crow laws were taking hold. The battle is now on to see if those COVID voting measures are made permanent under the new For the People Act, or rolled back following false claims of voter fraud that defeated Republican President Donald Trump. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act aims to restore elements of the 1965 law stripped away by the Supreme Court in 2013, but both bills seem destined to fail in the US Senate unless another relic of the Jim Crow era, the filibuster, is finally overturned.
Please get together. Bring it to go.
This week, the Republican governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds,
signed into law new restrictions on early voting, which are dozens of bills claiming to restore election integrity are working their way through the Georgia state legislature. By one count, 253 proposed laws limiting voter access have now been introduced by Republicans in 43 states. And what they're implying there, John, their connection to election integrity is not always clear. In Iowa, for instance, they're closing the polls an hour earlier and cutting the number of days when people can vote early from 29 to 20. How that safeguards elections, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, in Georgia, they've been trying to heavily reduce Sunday voting, which is hugely popular amongst black voters, coincidentally. And they've been trying to limit volunteers from providing water, snacks and chairs to voters who have been waiting in line all day. Although those ideas may well have ended up in round firing, thankfully. Also interesting is that the states passing the most electoral integrity laws just happen to be the key swing states. Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. But seriously, there is a question mark over these tactics. Stanford's boffins compared turnout rates amongst Texas 65-year-olds who are allowed to vote absentee with turnout amongst Texas 64-year-olds who are generally not allowed to vote absentee. And they found their turnout rates were almost exactly the same. Even though 18% of 65-year-olds voted absentee and only 3% of 64-year-olds voted absentee. Also, the proportion of 65-year-olds voting Democrat was only 22%. So basically no difference. Similarly, the 7 states that saw the biggest increase in absentee voting in 2020 actually trended very slightly towards Trump, not away from him. So these kinds of laws might not only be anti-democratic, but also kind of pointless.
Yeah, maybe. Well, for more, we're joined by Sylvia Albert, Director of Voting and Elections at Common Cause, a non-partisan voting rights watchdog organisation. Sylvia Albert, welcome to Planet America.
Thank you for having me.
I'm wondering, are you surprised at the speed with which we have seen Republicans in the last couple of weeks in the majority of American states looking at moving legislation to wind back a lot of voter access and voter rights laws?
I'm really not surprised, unfortunately. In the last few years, it has generally become the Republican mantra that voter access is bad. So it was expected, and it's just really blatant and unfortunate.
There seems to be this ongoing assumption, at least amongst some political types, that high voter turnout elections favour Democrats and low voter turnout elections favour Republicans. But political scientists keep on saying, no, that is not the case. And Donald Trump obviously did pretty well as far as turnout goes as well. What do you think? Do you think that...
Can you love?
At Q-Super.
Tonight's finalists have come a long, long way. They were little down from for 25,000 applicants. And they've all worked very, very hard to get here tonight. So for the last time, Holly, just remind us what's really at stake.
Well, we have the intention of making each of our champions £5,000 richer.
Let us unwrap the mystery.
Good evening. Daniel Andrews won't need surgery on his fractured spine, but admits he's facing a long recovery. Mark Santomartino is at the Alfred Hospital. Mark, the Premier is out of intensive care.
After 3 nights in the ICU, Alicia, doctors have said that the Premier no longer needs specialised care. He'll be moved to another ward here at the Alfred.
Hi, I'm Pam, and I'm here to talk about video games. Today, as the new generation of Xbox consoles are about to release, I'm starting a new series recommending games that I think you should check out on Game Pass. I think Game Pass is a great service that, for a monthly subscription fee, lets me try out a whole bunch of games that I might not have played otherwise. However, with so many games on the service, it can be tough to decide what's worth playing. So here are 7 games that I really enjoyed that I think you should check out. They can all be played on either an Xbox One, a Series S, or a Series X, or on PC, and are available as of November 2020. It's been a stressful time for a lot of people, and I'm sure many could use a distraction with a game that is charming, thoughtful, and full of diversions. Spiritfarer by Thunder Lotus Games is a lovely combination of all kinds of genres. It's a story-heavy management sim, along the lines of an Animal Crossing, but also has some really fun platforming and exploration. You play Stella, whose job it is to ferry the spirits of the deceased to the afterlife. But no one's ready to move on right away, so you need to help them complete their unfinished business. While you do this, you sail the seas and build up your boat to provide everything you need. You can garden, fish, smelt metal, and obtain lumber in order to upgrade your boat so you can build more and travel to new areas. There's never a lot of things to do, but it doesn't all feel like chores like I find in many games of this type. As you play, you find and explore new locations and find new characters to ferry. You not only get upgrades for your boat, but also new movement abilities for yourself.
I'm on my way.
Jumping, gliding, and swimming through the air makes all the traveling you'll do on foot very satisfying. Though the game's subject matter is death, everything about it is nice and comforting and handled with You're just trying to help people out and make them feel good, which you can often do by giving them their favorite meal and a hug. Spiritfarer lasts about 30 hours.
I'm on my way.
That's what feeling like outsiders. Yeah, America is a place where you don't have to look a certain way. You just have to have fidelity.
Engaging.
Trying to figure out how we can feel whole and make the world around us.
Engaging. Commencing action. Dodging. Good.
just want to shoot some aliens in the face. Xenocrisis by Bitmap Bureau is a twin-stick arena shooter where you need to confront an alien threat in some very hostile environments. This pixelated 16-bit shooter will have you mowing down thousands of alien enemies in 7 distinct areas. It lets you play with a host of different weapons like grenades, rocket launchers, and chain guns. You can also rescue humans and collect dog tags as you go, which will let you power up your character between each stage. The game is quite challenging, even on the easier mode, and continues player via local co-op to help you defeat the alien threat. Xenocrisis is a nice way to blow off some steam and will appeal to fans of retro games or movies like Aliens or Starship Troopers. It's only a few hours long, but there are a couple different game modes to try out.
Commencing action! Dodging, I'm good at it!
Game Pass has a few decent tactical games, but the one with the coolest twist is Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden by Valkyria. You play a small party of mutants, including an anthropomorphic boar and a duck. They'll navigate a post-apocalyptic Earth and search for a way to keep their home base a viable place to live, as well as the answers to a few mysteries. What makes the game cool is how it combines real-time exploration and stealth with turn-based combat. It's kind of the best of both worlds. You can freely explore each zone, looking for items and resources. Then when you come upon enemies, you can position your team, and when combat starts, you use the turn-based.
Seriously?
Positioning and even taking out a few solitary enemies before alarming everyone is a key success. The environments are great to explore and often house little side stories, and each character has some very interesting combat abilities to choose from as you level up. I also really enjoy that each character is distinctive. No faceless moments here. You'll get a chance to know all of your team, their motivations, and their skills.
Enemy neutralized.
Mutant Year Zero is about 15 hours long. Can't let a list go by without a good Metroidvania. Two Luna Nights by Team Rainhog is an action platformer where you play a maid sent into some kind of simulation by her boss. Honestly, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the story. The mechanics of this are unique. Sakuya attacks by throwing knives at her enemies and gets the ability to manipulate time. This opens up a lot of options for environmental puzzle solving. As you explore, you'll find objects indicated by their color that react differently to your time stop ability. Some will stop moving, some will start moving, and some will go backwards. You need to use this information to figure out how to open the path forward. But the best part of the game is undoubtedly the boss fights. They also function as puzzles. You'll need to figure out the best times to use your time stop, which is limited, in order to avoid bullet hell-like projectiles.
General?
Ah, good. You're awake.
Where?
Lecherous! Sorry, my hand just shot out my... Hey! Engineer!
No, not at all, sir. It was my fault. I apologize. Though I'm kind of surprised.
What was that?
Nothing, sir. Just thinking to myself again. Out loud, quietly.
I was impressed with your tenacity out.
Sir, the whole reason I became an engineer was to avoid fighting on the... I feel like serving under you on this last operation, but at the same time, seeing your fearlessness out there, I knew I could never...
I see. I am to the point my own men are calling me a witch. As a Valkyria, my worth is determined by my ability to but my you've
Sir. To hear that from you is... I feel I better understand why I'm here now, out in the field.
Huh. Your reason for fighting, I fear there's no home but the battlefield for a Valkyria.
General?
Just thinking to myself. For now, we have the galleons running. Prepare to move out in pursuit.
Hey, Johan! I hear we owe the victory at Geerland. What happened to the guy who used to curl up into a ball the minute...
It was all General Bless's command. Her leadership made me...
Whoa, whoa, whoa! You...
Don't be stupid. She's not like that.
Well, she's still no normal human. Nobody that gorgeous, that strong, and that smart as the...
She's all those things, sure. But she also seems lonelier than anyone else.
The Citadel has fallen.